Have you ever wondered why, in a world so rich, poverty still exists? It's a question that's perplexed thinkers and scholars for centuries, and it's a question we're going to explore today. Welcome to the intriguing paradox of poverty and wealth. On one hand, we have a world that is wealthier than ever before. We live in an age where the world's richest people are worth trillions of dollars, where companies generate billions in revenue, and where nations boast of their soaring GDPs. Yet on the other hand, we have millions of people living in abject poverty, struggling to make ends meet, and lacking access to basic human necessities. This stark contrast, this disparity between the haves and the have-nots, is what we call the global wealth disparity issue. And it's not just an issue, it's a paradox, a contradiction that seems to defy logic. After all, why should poverty exist in a world that's so rich? But here's a thought. What if this paradox isn't as illogical as it seems? What if, in fact, the rich are benefiting from the existence of poverty? It may sound outrageous, but consider this. The economic systems that we live in are designed in such a way that wealth tends to accumulate at the top. The rich get richer while the poor get poorer. In such a system, poverty isn't just an unfortunate side effect, it's a necessary condition. You see, poverty provides a cheap labor force, which drives down production costs, increases profit margins, and ultimately keeps the wheel of wealth accumulation turning. The rich, therefore, have a vested interest in maintaining this status quo. This isn't to say that all wealthy individuals or corporations consciously exploit the poor, but it does illustrate how our economic structures perpetuate poverty and wealth disparity. So, there you have it, the paradox of poverty and wealth. It's more than just a philosophical conundrum. It's a reflection of our society, our economic systems, and our values. Let's delve deeper into this paradox and see how the rich may be benefiting from the existence of poverty. Consider the fast fashion industry, a multi-billion-dollar sector that thrives on cheap labor. This industry, known for its quick turnaround of the latest trends, is built on exploitation. It feeds on the labor of those living in poverty, promising them employment, but at what cost? The reality is, many workers in this industry are paid a pittance for their hard work, while the brands they work for rake in massive profits. Let's take a look at some examples. Remember, these are not isolated incidents but patterns that persist across the industry. Some of the world's most recognized fashion brands have been accused of such practices. They're able to sell clothes at affordable prices because they pay their workers so little. One such brand was found to be employing workers in a South Asian country for less than $3 a day. Another, a European giant, was accused of exploiting labor in East Asia, with workers reportedly earning less than 50 cents an hour. And yet another, a popular American brand, was linked to factories where workers were paid less than the minimum wage. These brands, and countless others, have built their empire on the backs of these low-wage workers. They're able to churn out the latest trends at lightning speed, selling them at affordable prices, and still make a hefty profit. But where does this profit come from? It comes from the sweat and tears of underpaid workers in impoverished countries. We often marvel at how these brands can sell their products so cheaply, but the truth is, these low prices come at a high human cost. The workers are paid pennies for their hard work, while the brands make billions. It's a system that perpetuates poverty, trapping workers in a cycle of hardship and exploitation. The fast fashion industry is a glaring example of how the rich benefit from the poor. It's a system that thrives on inequality, turning a blind eye to the suffering it causes. The rich get richer on the back of poverty-stricken laborers who are paid pennies for their hard work. The housing market, another example where the wealthy benefit from the less fortunate. Let's dive into the intriguing world of bricks and mortar, a world where the rich often manipulate the housing market to their advantage, leaving the less fortunate with few affordable housing options. A prime example of this manipulation is gentrification. It's a term we've all heard, but what does it really mean? Gentrification begins when the affluent decide to move into lower-income neighborhoods. They bring with them the demand for upscale amenities, which increases property values. This might seem like a good thing on the surface, but it comes with a catch. As property values rise, so do rents and property taxes. This often forces longtime residents who can't keep up with the rising costs to move out. The wealthy are not just displacing the less fortunate, they are also erasing the cultural and historical identity of these neighborhoods. This is not an isolated event. It's happening in cities across the globe, from London to New York, from Mumbai to Johannesburg. Now let's talk about real estate bubbles. These are periods of rapid increase in property prices, fueled by speculation, high demand, and the belief that prices will keep rising. When the bubble eventually bursts, property prices plummet. Those who bought at the peak of the bubble are left with properties worth less than their mortgages. Who benefits from this? Well, it's not the average Joe who's just trying to find a home for his family. It's the wealthy investors who, having the means to weather the storm, can snap up properties at rock-bottom prices when the bubble bursts. They then rent these properties out or sell them when prices recover, making a tidy profit in the process. In both these scenarios, whether it's gentrification or real estate bubbles, the rich are playing a game of Monopoly with real-world neighborhoods and homes. The less fortunate are left to pick up the pieces, struggling to find affordable housing, and often forced into areas with fewer resources and opportunities. Once again, the poor pay the price while the rich reap the benefits. You might be asking, why doesn't the government step in and fix this? Indeed, that is a question worth pondering. The government, after all, is the entity that holds the reins of power. It sets the rules, it enforces the laws, and it is responsible for safeguarding the welfare of its citizens. But when we delve into the realm of wealth disparity, we often find that the government may not always play its part effectively. One of the key issues here is the legislation. Often laws and regulations are skewed in favor of the rich. For instance, tax laws may be structured in such a way that the wealthy can take advantage of numerous loopholes, allowing them to keep a larger portion of their income. Meanwhile, the less affluent may find themselves shouldering a disproportionate tax burden. This is not to say that the government intentionally designs policies to favor the rich. Sometimes it's more a case of the rich having the resources to exploit the system to their advantage. They can afford top-tier lawyers and accountants who can navigate the labyrinthine tax codes, while the average citizen may find themselves lost in the complexity. Moreover, the government's efforts to combat poverty often fall short. Social programs and initiatives designed to uplift the less fortunate may be underfunded or poorly implemented. This could be due to a lack of political will, bureaucratic red tape, or simply a failure to understand the intricacies of poverty. The result is that these initiatives often fail to make a significant dent in the poverty rates. In addition, the government's role in regulating markets can also contribute to wealth disparity. For example, lack of adequate regulation in sectors like housing and finance can lead to situations where the rich get richer while the poor get poorer. All of these factors combine to create a system where wealth tends to flow upwards, accumulating in the hands of a select few at the expense of the many. The government, intentionally or not, often plays a part in perpetuating wealth disparity. So, in this world of haves and have-nots, it's clear who benefits more. We've journeyed through a landscape of paradoxes, witnessing the stark contrast between wealth and poverty, and it's apparent who reaps the most rewards. We've delved into the intricate layers of the fast fashion industry, unearthing the reality that the pursuit for affordable, trendy clothing often comes at the cost of underpaid labor and substandard living conditions. This industry, among others, thrives on the exploitation of poverty for profit. We've also trodden the complex terrain of the housing market. We've seen how inflated prices and a lack of affordable options trap individuals in a cycle of poverty. Wealth accumulates at the top, leaving those at the bottom struggling to keep a roof over their heads. And then there's the role of the government. The government, as we've seen, can either exacerbate or alleviate this chasm between the rich and the poor. Policies that favor the wealthy, such as regressive tax systems and inadequate social safety nets, widen the wealth gap. On the other hand, progressive policies like fair taxation and robust social programs can help lift people out of poverty. But as we've learned, it's not just about blaming the rich or the government. It's about understanding the systems at play, the structures that allow this disparity to persist. It's about recognizing the ways in which our own choices, even something as seemingly trivial as buying a trendy shirt, can perpetuate these systems. So where do we go from here? The answer isn't simple, but it starts with awareness. We need to question our consumption habits, advocate for fair policies, and support initiatives that promote economic equality. Understanding the problem is the first step. The next is to work towards a more equitable world, where wealth doesn't come at the expense of the poor. So let's begin that journey. for a world where prosperity isn't built on the foundation of poverty, but on the cornerstone of fairness and equity.